Hello everyone, my name is Ajay. So in this part I'm going to show you how you can create a web API application in .NET Core. So where I'll be actually showing you how you can actually do all the CRUD operations from the database to the web API. I'll be using entity framework for connecting with the database. To start with, so let me create a new project and I click on ASP.NET Core Web Application here and click on next. I'm naming it as Web API Core Demo and click on create. Okay, make sure you select API here and make sure you uncheck this option for now and click on create. So it is creating the project. Okay, so here is the project. So make sure you build it for once. So this is actually the controllers folder. So this is the folder where you will be actually adding all the controllers related to API. So let's discuss about that in detail. So for now you just build it for once. So the build got succeeded. Now actually want to add few dependencies which are related to entity framework. So for that you go to dependencies here and right click over there and click on manage NuGet packages and click on browser and search for entity. Okay, uh, make sure you install this. Okay, so before you install this Microsoft Entity Framework core, make sure you select the version which is actually the same version of your application. So for you to get the Web API .NET version, you have to just go to the application and right click over there and go to properties. Uh, so here you can actually see the framework which is .NET Core 3.1. So make sure you select the same version in the while installing the dependencies as well. So here I want to select 3.1.0 and click on install. Click on accept. Okay, and also we need Microsoft Entity Framework Core.tools as well. Make sure you select the right version which is 3.1.0. Click on install. Click on accept. Okay, and also make sure you install entity framework core.sql server and select the right version and click on install. So you need to install these three dependencies for you to work with entity framework. Okay, click on accept. Okay, so let me build it for once now. Okay, it is building. So the first thing I want to add is I want to go to app settings.json and I want to add the connection string of the database. So actually I have the connection string here. So I want to copy this connection string and paste here. So this is nothing but the database details. So here if you can see I'll be showing you this demo using this database which is AJDB. So right now if you can see I don't have any tables in this database. So I'll be showing you by using entity code first approach. So I mean whenever I add migrations it will actually create the table in the database for me. So I'll be explaining you about much about that in a while. So for now bear with me. Okay, so this is just a connection string. I added the connection string. So you know, right, server is the name of the server. So for you to get the connection string details, just click connect this option here. So there in this pop-up you can see the server name. Okay, which is the same name like you. I mean you have to give the server name here and you have to give the database name here. So right now I want to use AJDB as the database. So I want to just give the database name here, and trusted connection equal to true is like making the Windows authentication possible. You have to give this as true. Okay, so once you give the connection string, uh, go to startup.cs. So in .NET Core you have a inbuilt dependency injection feature, so you can use dependency injection in .NET Core. So for now you just add this line of code. I'll explain about this while I'm creating the controller. Okay, so for now go to the startup.cs file and go to configure services and add this line of code. So this is nothing but okay, so before that, okay, what I'll do is just comment this line for now. Okay, so you added the connection string. Now you have to do is go to the application and I want to add a new folder. I will name it as models. So here I want to create all the classes related to the database, connectivity to the database and models as well. Okay, so I'll add a new class and I will name it as person context. Okay, and so I'm not going to explain you much about entity framework in this video. If you actually want to learn more about entity framework, I made a series of videos on entity framework. You can find them in my channel. Okay, so for you to play, I mean for you to have the uh, for you to do the transactions with the database, you have to actually have a context class if you're using entity framework. So this context class must inherit from db context class. Okay, and should be the generic of this. Okay, so this class should inherit from db context class, and I want to create a constructor for this person context class, and I want to pass the context options of person context generic type, name it as options, and I'll pass this option to the base constructor. So this is nothing but here in this constructor you have to actually pass the connection string details and other configuration details related to the database. Okay, so I'll be showing you where you actually pass the configuration details to this constructor. So just bear with me, just follow the code like what I'm doing here for now. And I want to add a person model. I want to create a class which will be having the person model. So for that I'll create a class and name it as person, and I'll be having, for a person class I want to have like 3 properties. One is person ID, the other one is name, the other one is country. Okay, so you have to actually use data annotations on top of the properties if you actually want to use entity framework code first approach. You know what, like so if I use this data annotation as key on top of this property, so whenever I add the migrations, it will actually create a table for me called person, and in that table I'll be having 3 columns. So for the 3 columns, if I want to make this ID as the primary key, then I have to add this data annotation which is called key. And also you do have many other data annotations where you can make required field or nullable value, so you can play around with that. So I'm just trying to make this as simple as I can so it will be easy to understand. Okay, so I just added a data annotation called key for making this property as the primary key in the database table. When we add the migration, it will actually create for us. So for now let's create the model here, and once you create the model you have to actually add the property called db set of type person, and I'll name it as person's property. Okay, I know this is not a valid word, but just to make it simple I'll name it as persons. Okay, so once this is done, once you are done with creating the person context class and model of the class that you actually want to do the transactions with the database, you have to actually go to the startup.cs file and add this line of code. Okay, it's nothing but for the services you are adding db context. It's nothing but like whenever there is a constructor, whenever I mean you create a object of a db context in a controller, so it will actually pass the connection string details to that object that automatically from here. Okay, so I'll also show you how exactly it works once I create the controllers. Okay, so for now add this line of code. So here we are just passing the connection string details. Okay, so dev connection is nothing but the connection string that we added here in this JSON or config file. Okay, so once you add this line of code, now make sure to build it once. Okay, so if you can see in my database I don't have any tables for now. So uh, if I so this is actually entity framework code. By using entity framework code first approach, you can actually create the tables in the database from the application itself by using migrations. So right now if you can see in person context, I have this model class. So this model class properties there in the context class. So whenever I add the migration, it will actually create a table called person in the database with all these properties as the columns. Okay, so let me add the migrations for now, so that it will create the table for me in database. Okay, go for you to add migrations, you have to go to tools here and go to Nugget package manager and go to package manager console. Okay, and I use the command called add migrations initial setup. Okay, initial setup one. Okay, so just adding the migrations. So here if you can see, after adding the migrations, there is a new folder which got created. So this is all about the migrations. Okay, so once you add the migrations, you have to actually use another command called update database. So that will actually create the tables in the database for you. Okay, so okay, let's see. So the build got succeeded. So now go to the database and let me refresh the database here. If you go to the tables, yeah, here you can see the persons tables was created successfully. So that is everything from the application. So by following entity framework code first approach, you have to just create the models of the class, and it will actually create the tables in the database for you by using the migrations. Okay, so that's about it. So once the table is ready in the database, once you are done creating the person context class, now the next thing is to create the controller for a person. So the next thing is actually for is to create a controller where you actually write the API methods in it. Okay, so for that go to controllers folder and add a new controller. Okay, naming it select the controller here, select API here and select API controller empty for now. Okay, click on add. So I'm naming it as person controller. Okay, so this is the person controller. So for any web API, we do have basic four methods: HTTP get, HTTP put, HTTP post, HTTP delete. So these all methods are for actually doing all the insert, delete, update and select operations with the web API. Okay, so first I want to create a API method which will actually get all the list of persons for me from the database. So for that I will actually use a list of persons. Okay, list of persons. So I'll name this as get persons. Okay, get persons. And so whatever you want to do with the database tables, then you have to use the person context class prop object in the controller. So for me to use this person context class in the controller, I want to actually create an object for that. Okay, so all the transactions, I mean, if you want to do all the transactions to the persons table in the database, you have to actually use this property which is available in the person context. So I actually created an object for person context. Now by using the property, okay, for now I'll pass this as null. Okay, so I'll show you exactly how that works. So I want to store list of persons in object dot persons to make it to list, and finally I want to return list of persons. Okay, so this method is actually returning me the list of persons from the database. So before that, I was saying something about this line here, right, which is actually related to dependency injection. So before, if you don't have dependency injection, you actually have to create a person context object in all the places wherever you want to use that context object. So by using dependency injection, if you actually create a controller for a constructor for your, you can inject it to the constructor of the controller. So let me actually show you. So I'll have a person context object called null, and I'll pass the object here. I'll assign this object with this object, the input parameter. Okay. So what, I mean, this is actually a constructor of this controller. So by using dependency injection, so whenever there is a constructor that is expecting a person context object, then it will actually create an instance of that person context, and it will pass these options to that constructor. Okay, which is nothing but we have the connection string options here. So by using dependency injection, we can actually achieve this. Okay, I mean, in a small application it doesn't matter, like you can create the person context object manually wherever you need, but if in case of large applications, you may need the object in many places, and in future if you actually want to change anything in the person context class, then you have to actually replace that person context in all the controllers. So if you use this dependency injection, I mean, it is all at one place. Like in future, if you actually want to change the person context, then you can do it in one place that will reflect in all the controllers. So I'm not explaining much about dependency injection here, but if you actually want to learn about it, there are many videos out there in YouTube. You can search for it. Okay. So right now you just add the constructor and pass the person context object, and you assign it to the object. So the startup class line code, this line of code will take care of creating the instance for us in the controllers by passing the connection string uh, to the person context. Okay, now once this is done, so actually return the API method for getting all the list of persons. So make sure you use this attribute called http get. So this is to get all the person. I mean, if you are doing any get operations, then you have to use this attribute on top of the API method. Okay, so once this is done, let us test whether it's working or not. So for me to test, we just run it. Okay, you can use Postman for testing it. I'll show you how you can use that as well. You can use either Postman or Fiddler. So for now I'll be showing you how you can test it using Postman. Okay, and also make sure the route is like this. See, if you can see the route, it is API / the controller name. So for me to access this this API method, I need to actually give, I need to actually append URL with API forward slash person controller name. Okay, it's nothing but person for now here. So let me get the URL API slash person, which is the controller name. Okay. Okay, so you know what? Actually, forgot to remove the object. Install this. So okay, so we have the object here. So we'll get the instance of that object via dependency injection. So let me run this again. I just removed the line of code which I added before. So the URL will be API forward slash controller name, which is person. Okay. It will actually return empty null. I mean empty array. Why? Because I don't have any records in this database table, right? I haven't yet inserted anything. So if you can see, I have no records in the database table, so I got an empty array. Let me insert a record here actually. Okay, it is loading. So ID is automatic, so I'll just give a name called Ajay. So it is India. Okay, added one record. Now let's see whether we get that record here. Okay, we got this successfully. So that means this function, that means it is working, you know. This API method is working successfully. So if you actually want to test this in Postman, just open a Postman and go to new tab and paste the link over there and click on send. Make sure you select get for get request, so you get the data here. Okay, so that's about it. So let us create the uh, let us create the API methods for insert, delete and update as well. So for me to do that, I will actually copy this. Let us do for insert. Okay, I'll say insert person. So insert person, we have to actually pass a person object. Okay, so I'll just name it as p. So this should be http post, as we are posting the data. Okay, so what I'll do is, so here I mean I don't want to return anything, so I'll just keep it void. And so for you to add a record to the person, you can actually use a person's property from the person's context, and you have this option called add, and you can just pass the person object to that, so that it will add that record to the person's uh, property, which is nothing but it will add it to into your database table. So once that is done, you actually, so I'll name this as context, you know, that way it will be simple, easy for you. Context. Okay, so once you add the person object to this person's property of the context class, then you have to save changes. It's like committing the changes to the database. Okay, and as it is void, I'll say return no content. Okay, action result action. Okay, I mean this is a default one, like I mean, for our API, you have to actually have some sort of return type. So for that reason, I use this action result. If it is a list of persons, you can use list of persons. If it is a person, you can use person. Okay, for now, I just created an action method for inserting a person, which is returning nothing, but we are passing for us to insert a person record, we have to pass the person object to this method that will actually add the person object to our database table. So let us test this. Okay, I mean, before that, I actually want to write the uh, methods for update and delete as well. Okay, so this is for update. So for update, you have to actually use http put. Okay, so here I'll be passing the property. So by using a link tutorial, I will select the persons class where I of id such that I dot id equal to p dot id. So this is nothing but I'm selecting the record from the database which is matching the this object's id. Okay, that way I can update. I'm selecting only one record first. Okay, so this is nothing but I'm selecting the person record from the database which is having this person's id. Okay, once I get that record, so I want to update person.name to p.name and person.country to p.country, and finally I want to save the changes. Okay, this is, I mean, here also I want to return nothing. So this is about updating a person. So here I'm selecting the person from the database which is matching this person's ID, and finally I'm updating that person's name and country with this person's name and country, and I'm saving the changes. That way I will update the person record in the database. Okay, and now I want to write a method to delete person. Okay, here I'll just pass the ID of the person in this method. That way I can actually delete it. So for you to delete, you can use context dot persons dot remove. So the same thing again, you have to select the person object from the database which you have to actually want to remove. So I'm selecting the record from the person's collection which is having this ID. Okay, so once I get that person's record from the context person's object, I can use context dot remove and pass that person object here. So that way it will remove that person record from the database, and finally I want to save the changes. Okay, and here I actually want to return nothing, and also I want to write another action method to get a single record of a person. Okay, so this is also http get. So I'll just get person based on id. Okay, so get a single person record based on the id. So for us to get that, so I will just select that. I mean, I'll use the same thing, same link query, where I'll get the person object based on the id that I'm passing here, and I'll just return that person object here. Okay, so make sure, I mean, when you're passing a property, when you're passing a parameter like this int id, make sure you have this I mean, for http delete, you make sure you have delete attribute on top of it. Okay, and also make sure you pass this. I mean, if you are having a parameter like id here, so make sure you actually include this. Okay, that way the URL will know that you are passing id. Okay, I'll do the same thing for http get. Why? Because I'm passing id here as well. Okay, so now if you can see, I have five API methods. One is to get persons, this is to insert person, this is to update, this is to delete person, this is to get person, where I'm using different attributes, different HTTP attributes on each of the method based on their functionality. Okay, let me test each and every, let us test all these action methods. Okay, so for me to test, I want to run the application. Okay, so once the application started running, let me test it again. Just still loading. Yeah, loaded. So the API actually started. So now go to the postman and want to test the get method for getting all the persons. Now let us test post method where we actually insert the person record. So for us to test that, so this is actually that action method. So this is HTTP post. So for inserting a person, you actually have to use this API method. So which is nothing but, and also you have to make sure you pass a person object to this API method. Okay, you can pass that in a JSON string or in any other format. So for now I'll pass it in a JSON string from the postman. So use the same URL, which is API followed by person, which is the controller name, and select post here and make sure you add the person body. Make sure you select raw here, make sure you select JSON here, and you can pass the JSON object of the person here. That way whenever you whenever you request for that API method, it will actually send this data to the API method. So I'll just copy this object here. Okay. So I'm passing this JSON object to that API method. That way I can insert. Okay, no need of ID. Why? Because ID is automatically implemented in the database. So I will just say as Raj and the country as USA. Let us see whether we are able to insert this record in the database or not. So I selected post and I selected the data type as JSON, and also I'll keep a breakpoint here so that you can check whether we are getting the data or not. I'll click on send. So if you can see the breakpoint here I mean we got it, the application is at the breakpoint now. So if you can see the person object, we got the values as USA as country and name as Raj. Okay, that's fine. Now let's click on continue. Okay, so if it is something related to 200, that means the response, I mean it is a successful result. Okay, so let's see in the database whether that record got inserted or not. So let's select the rows. So here if you can see the record got inserted successfully. And also let us go to this get persons API method and just click on send. That way I'll get all the records here. Okay, this API method is to get list of persons, and this API method is to add a person to the database. And let us test how we can actually update a person. Okay, for that uh, so now I want to test update person. For you to test this, I have to use the same URL, but you have to select put as the type here. So I want to copy the same URL. Now select put here, and here also you have to pass a object which is already in the database. Okay, so now I actually want to pass this object. Go to body. So for you to pass a object, you can go to body, select raw here. You can send it in multiple ways. So for now I'm sending it in JSON way, JSON format. Okay, So I want to actually update a record where the ID is 1 to, from Ajay India to Ajay USA. So I want to update the country of this record. So here in the database, if you can see, for this record the country is India. So I want to change this country to USA. So that is the reason I'm passing ID as 1, name as Ajay. I don't want to change the name, so just keep the same name and country as USA. And let's see. Let me click on send. Okay, it was successful. Now let us go to the database and let's see. Yeah, if you can see, the country got updated successfully. That means the update method is working fine as well. Now let's test the delete person action method. So for you to test the delete person, you have to open a new tab and copy the same URL and select delete here. So here if you can see, we are passing ID and you actually add something like this, right? So that is nothing but you can use a forward slash and you can pass the ID of the person here. That will actually delete the person record with the ID of 1. Okay, so let me test it. Click on send. So this will actually delete a person record which is having ID as 1. So this is successful. Now let's go to the database and see if that record got deleted or not. So if you can see, the record with ID 1 is deleted successfully. So that means the delete method is working fine. Okay, now let's test the get person method, which is nothing but same thing. Okay, again here if you can see in the method, it is expecting ID in this format, so you can actually pass that in the URL itself for using after forward slash here like this, and make sure you select get at this time for this time. Okay, why? Because it is get method, so you should expect a person record which is having ID 2. Okay, let me click on send. Here you got that person record. So that means all these methods are working successfully. I mean, this is about creating these methods. I mean, if you take any API, you basically have all these 5 methods. Okay, inserting, deleting, updating, getting a single record. Okay, so that is about creating and testing the API methods. And I actually want to show you an option. I mean, you can actually make this asynchronously also. There is an option in Visual Studio, so which will automatically create a controller to you by having all these methods. Okay, so for you to use that option, you go to controllers, click on add controller, go to API, select API controller with actions using entity framework. Select this option, so that will actually automatically give all these methods in a controller for you, and click on add. Okay, now select the model class, which is nothing but person, and you have to select the context class, which is nothing but person context here, and click on add. Okay, yeah, no, I mean, if you get an error like this, you go to uh, the dependencies, make sure you update all the dependencies. Okay, if there are any updates to be done, then it will throw error. Okay, I'm updating all the dependencies. Okay, once you update the dependencies, go to the controller again and add a new controller and select API here. Select API controller with actions using entity framework and click on add. Select the model class here, select the context class here and click on add. So this is nothing but it will automatically create a controller for you with all the API methods related to that context class and that model. Okay, so okay, still building. So it is taking some time. Yeah, it's generating the code. So this is a very nice feature. You can automatically create all the API methods by using just passing the model the context thing. Yeah, I mean that is actually a way of adding. I think there is some problem with my dependencies, but that is about it. If you want to add something automatic related to the controller, API controller, you can use that option as I showed. Make sure you actually update all the dependencies. There is some issue with my dependencies, but that's okay. I mean, here if you can see, you got to know about all the API methods. Okay. So also I'm planning to show you how you can actually consume these API methods in a React application in the front end. Okay, so that I'll be explaining in the next part. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comment section of this video. Yeah, thank you for watching my video. Thank you.